Welcome to another episode of Small Business Talks kung saan pag-uusapan at pagkakwentuhan natin ng storya ng mga hashtag negosyanteng Pinoy. At ngayong araw ay makakasama natin si Mr. Elbert or ang Chief Visual Consultant ng Pushpin Visual Solutions. Magandang hapon, Sir Elbert.
Hey, good afternoon sa inyong lahat and good afternoon, Clary. Thanks for having me over.
Thank you for giving the time din po, Sir Elbert, for joining us today. But Sir Elbert, siguro sa mga ka-SBN natin na nakikinig ngayon, no? Siguro gusto nilang malaman kung ano ba itong iyong negosyo na Pushpin Visual Solutions.
Alright, so Pushpin Visual Solutions, isa siyang design studio that works primarily with mga nonprofits, foundations, social enterprises, essentially mga cause-oriented organizations. Kasi ang gusto naming itulong sa kanila is magamit yung mga drawings namin, yung storytelling skills namin para maiparating yung mga advocacies nila sa mas marami pang tao. Our goal is that we make information easy to understand so that we can help make things make sense and inspire more positive action for a better world.
Mm-hmm. And kailan po natin sinimulan, Sir Elbert, itong inyong negosyo?
My gosh, siguro mga mag-8, 9 years na siguro.
Years.
Malapit na rin mag-10. Oo, malapit na siya mag-grade school. Grade schooler na siya.
Medyo matagal na po pala, no? So, how old were you when you started Pushpin?
I think I was almost 30 na at that time eh. And then I've been spending around mga 15 years as an independent freelancer doing work for mga ad agencies and mga publishing houses. I used to create comic strips, comic books, children's books, ganyan. On top of everything else I was doing. And around that time, there were two things kasi that I was experiencing. The first was that I was at the point where I wanted to be able to do more with the talents that I have. And na-realize ko, when you're doing freelance kasi, you're essentially just doing things on your own. And there's only so much you can do kung mag-isa ka. And syempre, from a practical level, parang ibig sabihin nun kung freelancer ako, hindi ako makakapagpahinga kasi tuwing magbabakasyon ako, hindi ako kumikita. And around that time as well, I was also thinking, I've done so much work for advertising agencies. Wala naman akong choice kung ano yung types of projects na isasalang or ibibigay sa akin. And putting together my own business allowed me the opportunity to, I guess, actively look for clients that I really wanted to work with, whose values resonated with me, so that when I'm actually doing the work, yung tipong gaganahan din ako magtrabaho, right? I mean, yes, I'm always passionate naman about visual communication and illustrations and storytelling. Pero, syempre, iba pa rin yung gagamitin ko siya para magbenta ng isang produkto na hindi ko naman bibilhin with my own money versus gagamitin ko yung mga talents na yon para tumulong sa mga organizations na tumutulong mag-address ng climate change or women empowerment or education. Parang syempre ako rin mismo na-excite na gamitin yung talento ko para sa mga ganong klaseng purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes, actually. Pero yun nga, Sir Elbert, nabanggit mo no, you were doing freelance works prior to starting Pushpin. Yeah. And how old were you when you started freelance works?
Maaga pa kasi lumaki kasi ako in a household na hindi binibigyan ng allowance. And I mean, hindi naman sa api ako kasi actually my parents made sure that everything we needed in school provided for, di ba? Yung instead of bigyan kita ng baon na kaching, it's ito yung Tupperware, nandiyan na yung pagkain mo. So everything we needed was provided for. Pero syempre, as a teenager, ibig sabihin nun, kung lahat ng needs ko sagot na, paano yung mga luho ko? So even as early as when I was in high school, I was 15 years old. Talagang kung anong mahanapan ko na racket, parang sige, tara subukan natin. We'd have mga trips abroad where bibili ako ng mga stationery na mga Sanrio na dun lang nabibili, and then bebenta ko siya for 3 times the amount to my classmates. Uy, di ba? So parang drop
Mhm.
shipping bago siya nauso.
Oo, totoo.
We'd have um, mga helpers and mga parents na nag-aantay ng sundo sa labas ng school. Tas bebentahan ko ng mga sabon pampakinis ng balat, yung mga ganyan.
Sumukat.
Yan. So it's really just trying out different things. The freelance thing officially happened when I was in college na. And around that time, I was taking up this class, and as usual, nagdo-drawing ako sa likod ng notebook kasi ganun ako mag-process ng information. Dapat dinodrawing ko siya or visualize ko siya. Or even when I'm just thinking, kailangan gumagalaw yung kamay ko because otherwise, ngangat-ngatin ko lang yung kuko ko eh. Parang medyo,
Mhm.
it's a habit I'm trying to break eh.
Mhm.
Unsurprisingly, nahuli ako ng teacher na parang, ba't daw ako nagdo-drawing? Magstay daw ako after class kasi distracted ako eh.
Okay.
So pinagalitan ako. But then after that, sabay sabi niya, alam mo, I also work for World Wildlife Fund. Gusto mo ba na
Hmm.
kailangan namin ng may magdo-drawing ng poster. Ikaw na lang. Tapos ako parang, uy, sabay, hindi ko alam, pinagalitan ba ako? Pero parang ni-reward din ako for my
Parang napaganda
yun.
pa 'no, kumbaga.
Oh, parang na-reward din ako, sabay pinagalitan ako. Um, no, and that's where it started. Na-realize ko na parang, okay, yung talents ko, I could use it for this. I don't need
Mhm.
to. I think yun yung isang big realization ko eh. Before that, lahat ng pwede kong makuhang opportunity or makita na opportunity, sige, pasukin ko yan. I was saying yes to so many different things. Um, whether I'm qualified for it or not. And the,
Mhm.
the shift with this one was that this was something that, I thought of as a talent. I recognized it naman eh. Kasi even nung estudyante ako, sikat ako pag may poster making project eh. Lahat gusto ko, grupo ako eh. Pero,
Mhm.
I never thought of it as something I could really make a living out of. Kasi people would always say na pag artist gutom or pag artist mahirap.
Mhm.
Um, and I could also see at the same time that my talents, ang layo ng gap between the artists that I really admired versus pag tinitignan ko yung trabaho ko, parang ang layo. Hindi ako abot doon.
Mhm.
But I think the big shift was that, I don't need to be the best. I think if I am able to get myself to a level of confidence, if I'm able to find people who see the value in my work, and they see that I'm also confident enough in the value of my work that I'm willing to offer it, I think that can be the start of a very fruitful journey eh, na I can improve as I go along. After the project, lahat ng kliyente tatanungin ko, what did I do well? How can I improve? And then just take it from there. Eh. Um, and in the meantime, recognizing as well na for this particular talent, I might not be the best, but that's also just one small part of the service delivery, right? Yung
Mhm.
nandyan din yung professionalism, how I conduct myself, madali ba akong katrabaho, am I on time, etc., etc. That I think factor into whether they want to work with me or not. So, I don't always succeed in those things. In fact, minsan, sorry, late ako, ganito, ganyan. But I think recognizing that allowed me the courage to really pursue it and try.
Mhm.
Yun. Yun.
Yep, and actually Sir Albert 'no, nakaka-relate ako dun kasi I was starting my marketing agency, kapag merong project na puwede mong makuha, gagawin mo. Sige, kahit medyo hindi ka sigurado dun sa quality of delivery ng service na mabibigay mo, kukunin mo siya, eh. Pero siguro
Yeah.
that's one challenge as well for skill-based businesses 'no, kasi, mainly itong si Pushpin Visual Solutions is based on your,
Mm.
creative skills 'no. And, siguro
Yeah.
isang question na gusto kong itanong dito is, when you were starting out, how hard was it na yun nga, from freelancer to starting your own business, and of course, dadating ka sa point na if it's a business na, you have to delegate. Coming from a freelancer na ikaw yung lahat ng gumagawa, ngayon magkakaroon ka ng
Right.
ilang team
Yeah.
members or maybe contractors, na i-delegate mo sa kanilang task, how hard it is to delegate the tasks na sobrang skill-based. Like yung, or actually for this case, creativity-based. Na how is it hard to delegate, to assign, or to um, bigay sa kanila completely yung decision making, or kung yun man yung ginagawa mo when it comes to these creative deliverables, or nagkaroon ka ba ng SOPs? How was your approach at the early start of Pushpin Visual Solutions?
Siguro by way of addressing that, babalik ko rin ulit dun sa realization nga of why I pursued this, no? Kasi
Mm.
dyan din nag-uugat yung mga challenges ko eh. Um, I think to your point, no, yung when you were starting the marketing thing, basta kaya gawin. Yung
Mm-hmm.
just because you can, na-realize ko yun eh, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Kasi the things that you really want to do gives you that extra fuel eh. Mas ganado ka lang talaga kung gusto mo rin yung ginagawa mo. And that was the big shift when I started pursuing illustration and design, na because ganado ako nito compared sa kunwari nagbebenta ako ng sabon, nagbebenta ako ng stationery, parang hindi siya enough for me eh, na kumikita ako from those eh. When I was doing the illustration and design work, you know, there's that extra part na because it's one of my talents, because I know I can be good at it, syempre mas masipag ako magtrabaho. Now fast forward to na-realize ko rin na, you know, kailangan kong at the age of 30, we had just gotten married. Kailangan ko nang mag-support ng family ngayon. Gusto ko rin makapagbakasyon and therefore hindi na pwede yung 12 to 16 hours nagdo-drawing. And so putting up the business makes sense as a way to kind of sustain myself rin. Because the other thing I realized is the vacations are important pala to sustaining yourself. Kailangan
Mm.
may pahinga ka and may recharge ka para pwede kang umusad ulit. Hindi ko kaya yung hustle culture na 24 hours a day nagtatrabaho. So kailangan ko rin ng pahinga. But part of the challenge there was I've been doing the production work for so long na I know a specific way of drawing and designing things and creating things. Paano ko ita-translate yon when I bring in other people na into the
Mm.
circle? Um, so I had to really make a concerted effort not to micromanage the people I was working with. That was one of the big challenges. And kasabay pa nun, because nga now I'm also answerable to more people because it's not just ako lang yung pakakainin ko. I also needed to continually remind myself of the realization na just because you can doesn't mean you should. Minsan, pag may tiwala na sa'yo yung kliyente, tatanungin niya, Clary, kaya mo bang gawin to? Kaya, kakanin, di ba? Yung parang, sige, kaya naman eh. Wala siya sa menu namin, pero sige, kaya naman namin.
Gagawa ng paraan.
Magawa ng paraan. Oo, so, um, one of the things that I also kept saying at the start of the now, doubt later. Yun yung isa sa bukang bibig ko. Sige lang, do now, doubt later. Yes lang ng yes. But again, I recognize that when you say yes pala to certain things, that also means you're saying no to others. And you have to be mindful as an entrepreneur and as a businessman, especially kung maliit pa kayo. Now, what you're saying no to, na hindi mo aware na pag-iisang tabi mo na pala, the things you might be saying no to might be the things that actually would be more meaningful to you, that would have more impact on the growth of your business. That would make a bigger change in the way your business is run, diba? And that was the challenge that I had to recognize for myself, that I had to eventually overcome, because it was showing up in all sorts of ways. Na parang in the projects that we were taking on, yes lang ng yes. Parang, sige, kakayanin. Do now, doubt later. In the people we were bringing in, even then, number one, it was a struggle for me to find people and hire them. Kasi that mentality that I had before, yung do now, yung just because you can, doesn't mean you should. Um, that was manifesting itself in all sorts of ways. From the projects that I was taking on, yung clients would ask me, kaya mo ba yan? Oo, kakayanin namin yan. Do now, doubt later. To
Mhm.
even the people we were bringing in. Na in the first place, I was very hesitant to hire. Kasi iniisip ko, hindi, kakayanin ko yan. I'll do it. I can do it. But just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Kasi it meant na I
Mhm.
was salesperson, ako rin nagpo-production, ako rin naggagawa ng finance, everything. So, when we did eventually start hiring people, I was making the early mistake of hiring people who were available, not because they were the right people.
Mhm.
'Di ba? Eh, ikaw na yung nag-apply, eh, 5 lang naman pagpipilian ko. Sige na lang piliin na kita kasi ikaw yung nandiyan. But just
And
because you
dahil
can,
urgent.
doesn't mean you should, 'di ba? Oo, just
Mhm.
because you can
Dahil
doesn't mean you
urgent,
should.
kailangan mong i-hire.
Yeah. But eventually, yun nga eh, parang I think that does show up in very insidious ways. And it did affect the way the business could have grown, the way it could have performed. Um, just talking about hiring, for instance, I think if you hire people because they're available, then that means they're not necessarily the right person. They're not necessarily the best person. Um, what happened in our case was that I ended up spending even more time fixing the mistakes of the person, you know, trying to assuage and, manage the crises that were coming up. And in the end, realizing that it's not because hindi trainable yung person, it's because the values pala weren't aligned. And so kahit anong turo ko sa kanya, hindi lang kasi talaga pala siya ganado magtrabaho. As opposed to, I could have just scaled down muna my time. I should have scaled down my ambitions, adjusted my timelines, and in doing so, would have been a better result for me because I could have preserved the reputation of the company. I didn't need to go through the process of, oh my gosh, nasira tuloy kami dun sa isang kliyente na to because of what happened, you know? And at the same time, I could have maybe gotten the respect pa of clients because I was courageous enough to say, thank you for the offer, pero hindi pa namin kaya at this point yung volume. Call us again in 3 months. Right? I think sometimes saying
Mhm.
no in itself is a good thing for a business person to learn how to do and to know when to do.
And I think, Sir Albert, this is a very great topic, especially for those service-based business owners, no? Kasi ito yung una, when we are trying to grow our business, ito yung unang kalaban natin, thinking na growth is equal to the number of clients that we have. But sometimes, kahit apat, lima yung kliyente mo, but you were able to nurture and ensure na yung quality of work mo is at par to the gusto mong i-deliver sa kanila. Kasi actually, ito, nakaka-relate talaga ka sa Albert dito. Kasi yun din, I have a marketing agency and ito yung isa sa mga una mong pagdidesisyonan. Yung hiring, dahil kakatanggap mo lang ng project, parang okay, medyo need natin by end of this month, makakuha na tayo ng tao para dito sa bagong service na to at masimulan na natin lahat. And eventually, mangyayari is marirealize mo, dapat hinindian ko. So this is actually a very great lesson for service-based business owners. Pero yun nga, Sir Albert, nabanggit mo kanina, na pagdating dun sa team members na hindi pala align yung
Right.
values nyo, how important is it na number one, pasok sila sa team culture na gusto mong i-cultivate. And number two is pasok sila dun nga sa values na meron ka as a business owner and sa values na gusto mo dun sa company culture mo.
Yeah, well, I think it's two things, right? Napasok sila dapat sa skills as well, right? Values
Mhm.
and culture is
Tama.
one thing, skills is the other. But yeah, let's assume na sa skills na check off mo na yung boxes. And that in itself, I realize, isa rin yun sa mga learnings ko over the past 8 years. Na just because you say you're looking for a marketing person, kunwari, doesn't mean pare-pareho ng skill sets yung mga marketing people na yan. So you also have to be
Mhm.
clear as an entrepreneur, ano ba yung skill sets na critical and na kailangan ko in my business at this stage, right? That I'm hiring these
Mhm.
people. Iba-iba yun eh. Um, and so But let's assume, kunwari na figure out na natin yon. The other part is really values and yung culture that you wanna encourage. Um, it takes so much work to build the positive culture that you want, but it takes just 5 minutes for the wrong person to bring it all down. You know,
Mhm.
you keep thinking about, kahit na anong alaga, anong policies meron ka to look after your people, to nurture the kind of work environment you want. Pero if there's just one person who thinks otherwise, who maybe doesn't appreciate what you're doing for the company, who doesn't appreciate the people that he's working with, maling salita lang niya, maling behavior lang niya, then already they're modeling it to other people. And you as the business owner, you're not necessarily looking after everyone ora-orada. 'Di ba? You don't
Mhm.
naman, hindi mo naman sila anak eh. Hindi mo naman mababantayan yun ora-orada. So you don't see what they're doing all the time. You don't know what they're talking about all the time. And if you're not able to catch it in time, then there's that implicit sense of, uy, I can get away with this pala. And next thing you know, all the hard work that you've done to try and create a positive work environment na-undermine. And so I think it helps to have that consistency. I think it also helps to have a sense of transparency. One of the things that we've practiced in Pushpin, that I didn't practice before, and now I'm trying to be more mindful about it, is if ikaw yung business owner, and especially for a lot of the people in our network na nakikinig ngayon, 'di ba? Some of them might be solopreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, yung walang ka-partners. I'm
Mhm.
doing it. And so kahit ano pang kaganda yung drawing ng org chart mo, it's really just ikaw and then everyone else, right?
Mhm.
The challenge with that is there's this immense pressure as the business owner minsan na, no, I need to have a handle on everything. Kailangan na figure out ko na tong lahat. Kasi paano kung may tinanong sa akin mga tao ko? I think part of nurturing that value and culture is, number one, to take every opportunity to talk about it, just to reinforce that. And the second is to have a sense of transparency, in the sense na, if this core value is something you want to nurture, pero let's face it, paano kung aspirational pa yan for your people or even for you mismo? Like, if you want to, kunwari, let's practice timeliness, pero ikaw mismo laging late sa meeting, I think you owe it to yourself to be
Mhm.
transparent to the rest of the organization. Na, you know what, this is one of our core values kasi gusto ko talagang i-develop sa ating lahat ito. And ito yung magiging impact sa mga kliyente natin, sa isa't isa, sa kumpanya. But that's also something I need to work on myself. Therefore, hold me accountable for it.
Mhm.
I think sometimes we forget na tayo bilang business owners, tao pa rin naman tayo. And if we're able to recognize our flaws, if we're able to talk about the core values, the culture in a way that's meaningful, but at the same time realistic, na tayo mismo, baka may mga ibang parts dyan na hindi pa natin na-exhibit or hindi na napapakita sa behavior natin. Or gusto man natin pero minsan pumapalya, then I think we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the company we're trying to build, we owe it to the people to also be transparent about it and to ask them for help. Na,
Mhm.
let's hold each other accountable so that we can grow together as individuals, as a team, and as an organization.
And siguro dito na din papasok na yung pagiging open dapat natin as entrepreneurs, as business owners to feedback from our team members. Kasi most of entrepreneurs dapat hindi natin tingin sa sarili natin na tayo lang yung tama in our company, in our organization. And it's very important for our growth as an entrepreneur and growth ng ating company. Kasi pag ganun yung parang approach natin, siguro yung mga magagaling natin na team members, magsasawa sila sa ganung culture, no? Kapag ikaw na lang at ikaw yung nasusunod, ikaw at ikaw na lang yung parang nagda-direct ng lahat ng gagawin. And siguro Sir Elbert,
But you know,
siguro, sure.
but you can't fault them for it. Kasi I think,
Mm.
if you think about the journey that a lot of us business owners take, you
Mm.
you can't really fault them for feeling like hindi kailangan talaga I know all the answers. Dapat, 'di ba? Alam ko lahat
Mhm.
ng kailangan gawin. Because from the time we were kids and the way we were taught as students, parang laging meron tayong incentive pag alam natin yung tamang sagot. 'Di ba? Parang, "Uy, mataas yung
Mhm.
score mo, alam mo yung lahat ng sagot eh." And even when we're doing the work, kunwari empleyado tayo, nag-start tayo bilang empleyado or as freelancers, you also get incentivized for knowing what to do. Yung, "Uy, ma-promote ka kasi galing ka magtrabaho eh. Magaling ka
Mhm.
mag-execute, magaling ka mag-take action." And so that kind of thinking of I need to know everything, I need to know what to do, I need to have the solution to the problems carries over even when we're already the boss or the business owner. um and sometimes we forget that number one, what we know before may not necessarily apply anymore, di ba? and
Mhm.
and what we're good at, someone might be better at pala in your company. And so I think one way that, so outside of Pushpin, one of the things that I also do is I'm a certified coach and I help leaders develop, I help teams work better and perform better. So one of the things that I always encourage business owners to practice, the leaders, the managers, even if you're just a team member, you mentioned feedback earlier. So asking for feedback is one of the big things, and being able to receive it in a way that's not defensive is another thing.
Mhm.
But I always say one of the big practices, one of the most impactful thing we should practice as business owners is to ask more questions. Hindi tayo natuturuan yan bilang estudyante. As students, may points ka pag may tamang sagot. Pero hindi ka tinuturuan paano magtanong para mahanap yung tamang sagot. I think it's better late than never na we also practice that more in our business. That we should learn to ask better questions. We should learn to ask more questions. And we should reflect on alin ba yung mga questions na effective tanungin. 'Di ba? Minsan kasi kahit tanungin kita, Clary, maikli lang yung tanong ko pero ang haba nung sagot mo, hindi mo naman sinagot yung tanong ko. Ako
Mhm.
ba yung hindi marunong magtanong or ikaw yung hindi nakakaintindi? That kind of reflective process is really helpful eh. Kasi I think as the world becomes ever more complex and dumadami yung mga competition natin kasi we're also now at the point where technology enables us to do so many things. It's so easy right now to start a new business more than ever, more than in any other
Mhm.
time. And then as the pandemic taught us, competition is not just limited to sino yung nasa kapitbahay mo. They can come from Visayas, from Mindanao, they can come from other countries. Di ba? Um, I think we owe it to ourselves to know how to find the right questions, to define the right problems we should be solving, you know, and not always assume that we know everything there is to know. Kasi that's the only way we can stay competitive and stay relevant as business owners. That we know to ask questions, that we are humble enough to ask questions. And more crucially, that we know what questions to ask in the first place, di ba? So yun,
Mhm.
asking questions talaga very important.
And yun nga, Sir Elbert, siguro ito din yung isang very important recipe for growth. Na hindi ka maging, kasi if you are, kung parang confident ka na sa kung anong meron ka, or you stop trying to discover on things that you could improve on, coming from feedbacks, siguro doon na yung nagsisimula ng stagnation. Stagnation mo as an entrepreneur, stagnation ng business mo. Pero Sir Elbert, tawid lang tayo ng konti, no? Balikan
Sure.
natin yung journey mo with Pushpin Visuals. When you were starting or up until now, what were the biggest challenges you faced as an entrepreneur and leading Pushpin Visual Solutions?
Sure. So I mentioned some of the challenges to you, di ba? Yung tendency to say yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
The other big challenge that we had was that when I co-founded Pushpin, um, my co-founders and I, we were all designers and illustrators. And so the big challenge that we had was, oh my gosh, yung network ko, puro mga illustrators and designers lang. Kami-kami lang yung magkakakilala.
Mm-hmm.
So Sure, meron akong malawak na talent pool, pero sino magbabayad sa atin? Lahat pa naman kami, introverts down to the last person. The last thing that we want is, you know, mag-cold call, tapos pag nare-reject or binabagsakan, luluha kami. Tapos, is it me? Ako ba yung may problem? So that was one big challenge, that our limited network meant that we really needed to, number one, find a way to get out of our shell and really reach out, and number two, build a more diverse network. Um, Hindi pwede na yung, hindi ko nga alam saan ba nanggaling yung term, Clary, na if you build it, they will come. Parang common na kasabihan yun, di ba?
Actually, this is the first time I heard of that saying. Pero siguro, uh,
Oh,
early
parang
part
ano
ng mga
kasi yan eh.
entrepreneurs.
Naririnig ko kasi yun minsan pag mga business talks and whatever. Parang build it and they
Mm,
will come. Yung basta raw yung service mo nakaka-solve ng actual problem, darating at darating daw yung mga
naturally
customers.
napapasok.
Hindi rin siya totoo. I mean, there will
Yeah.
always be early adopters. Yes, yung mga tipong kahit ano, sige, try natin yan. Apple Watch ba? Sige, try ko yan, Apple Watch. Pero you kind of have to find a way to bridge yourself from those early adopters to that middle part ng normal curve. Otherwise, how do you scale? Are you gonna stay like a small weekend hobby lang? Di ba? Hindi naman sustainable yun eh. Um,
Mhm.
and so one of the things I really looked for. So for a while, I think for the better part of the first 4 years, 5 years, talagang punta ako sa BGC sa Makati, isa-isahin ko bawat building doon. Titignan ko sa lobby yung, di ba meron silang nakapaskil na listahan, second floor, aling kumpanya, third floor, fourth
Mhm.
floor. Iniisa ko talaga yun, iisa-isahin ko yun, bibisitahin ko sila, hingin ko yung numbers. Just endless. I was spending 20 hours a week just on cold calls and door-to-doors, offering our services. And while it was, while it kept us alive, and it was a good exercise in, getting out of my shell, um, and learning how to talk to different types of people, we really needed to be more strategic than that. We really
Mhm.
needed to find a more efficient way to do that. And so going online, I found this organization called Business Network International. Um, and I mentioned this to you beforehand, invited you to one of the meetings, diba? And
Mhm.
and I was so taken by the fact na, I've tried other business organizations, um, chambers, etc., etc. Na-try ko yung mga yon eh. But for the most part, they were very, parang mas social network rather than actual business network. Business Network
Mhm.
International was an organization where members actually make a commitment to each other to help grow the business through word of mouth. And so we would meet every week para pakinggan namin isa-isa ano yung mga tinatrabaho mo ngayon and anong referrals hinahanap mo. Sinong kliyente gusto mong ma-meet. And we'll take note of these things and say, uy, si Clary gusto niyang ma-meet yung client ko na restaurant. Sige, Clary, usap tayo mamaya, pakilala kita. So a lot of it is really just, you know, systematically and intentionally generating referrals for each other through education and relationship building. Because the more I learn about your business, Clary, the more I'm able to bring it up in conversation with my clients, the more I can bring these clients to you. Right? And the more you talk to me about the business and you say, ay, kailangan ko ng ganitong clients, then I'll know, okay, lagi ka naghahanap ng mga marketing manager ng ganito ganyang kumpanya. Next time I meet one, I'll know to connect them to you. That's allowed us to really scale our business. When we started that org, we were still a group of 5 partners. Now we're a team of 10 with a close network of, we call them permanent freelancers, parang in residence sila sa amin.
Mhm.
But all in all, we're a group of 22 na now. Um, and we're reaching clients not just within the country but all over the world because of that network. And apart from it helping overcoming the challenge of saan ko ba hahanapin yung kliyente ko, it's also allowed me to really enrich myself as an individual. Kasi I think that's one of the things that I miss about being a student eh. Especially in college, when you're a student, wala kang choice kung sino classmate mo. So, nami-meet mo talaga kung sino-sinong tao eh.
Mm.
When you're a business owner, saan ka makakahanap ng mga kakilala? Saan ka makakahanap ng bagong tao? And with this org, si Business Network International, not only am I getting to, I'm part of a chapter kasi where we have 80 members eh. From different industries lahat yun. So, I get to meet, I get to build relationships with people in shipping and logistics. I know someone in construction, in health and wellness, etc., etc. But every week, we also invite our other friends to visit the meeting so that we can further enrich our networks. And so in doing so, I get to meet people who hindi ko nga alam na may ganun palang negosyo. Hindi ko alam na may ganyan palang tao. And like, that's just so enriching as an entrepreneur. And I guess the last thing about, talking about the challenges, you were asking earlier, ano ba yung mga challenges ng Pushpin?
Mm.
Is that even though I know our business model is not unique, I think the entrepreneurial journey may kanya-kanyang nuances and challenges siya. And because my friends were all freelancers or employees in ad agencies, sinong makukwentuhan ko na nakaka-relate sa akin? Wala eh. Wala. Parang minsan, when I start talking about projections and sales targets,
Mm.
parang, bakit tayo nag-uusap tungkol sa pera and whatever? So having this network in BNI, in Business Network International, where they're all business owners and professionals going through the same journey as me, I get to learn from their mistakes, especially if they're further along the journey than I am. I get to have peers who can relate to me kasi sabay-sabay kaming, tumatahak nung landas na yon. And I
Mm.
also have the opportunity to pay it forward because we have new members who come in who are just starting out, and I help them avoid the mistakes I made so that they can make all new mistakes. So it's
Mm.
very enriching and fulfilling as well, being part of an organization like that.
And this goes to show na sobrang importante talaga for entrepreneurs having a group, a network na ma-share natin ang problema natin, na makakapagbigay ng advice sa atin, and more importantly, makakapag-refer ng businesses sa isa't isa.
Yeah.
And with BNI, ayun nga, Sir Elbert, na to share lang ha, si Small Business Network, the very first idea and concept of Small Business Network before we pivoted into digital media, it was similar to BNI. But yun nga, due to some decisions in business model, ginawa namin siyang digital media. And ever since, just to share sa ating mga ka-SBN, I recently applied sa BNI and dun ko na-meet si Sir Elbert. And this is one very great organization. Nung unang beses kong pumunta sa BNI, nakita ko yung system. That's a very important thing that I saw about BNI. The number one, the system na meron sila in terms of referral. But aside from that, the accountability of each BNI member to make sure that they provide value to each of the other members ng BNI. So siguro yun nga sa mga ka-SBN natin na gustong makilala pa kung ano ang BNI and kung paano to makakatulong sa mga businesses nila. Maglalagay po kami ng link sa ating caption dito to know more about BNI. But yun nga, so Albert, balikan natin itong si Pushpin Visual. So BNI has really created a lot of opportunities for Pushpin Visuals. So in that 8-year span, malaki yung naging role ni BNI sa growth nyo. Now, ngayon pagdating ng pandemic, how were you affected? How was Pushpin Visuals affected if case man na meron tayong mga projects na nawala, and how was BNI able to help you survive, kumbaga, itong pandemic na nandito pa tayo ngayon?
I think when the pandemic hit, on the whole, on the business side, it was a good time for Pushpin. This is where I think all the years that we've been working on kind of prepared us for this because number one, we've always been working remotely. The way we structured Pushpin, we really wanted to enable people who work with us to succeed from anywhere. So whether you're working sa La Union, basta may internet, okay
Mhm.
lang. Nandito ka sa syudad, okay lang. And we intentionally hire from all over the country, wanting to give them the opportunities, but telling them, sige, diyan ka na lang, huwag ka na dumagdag sa siksik dito sa Manila. Diyan ka na lang.
Mhm.
Okay lang, we'll make it work. Um, so as a structure, we're okay. In terms of projects, we were doing well as well because like I mentioned, Pushpin kasi essentially trabaho namin dakilang tagapaliwanag eh. When the pandemic
Mhm.
hit, and because our primary target market is to help nonprofits and foundations and organizations, we had a lot of work where essentially ang trabaho namin, pakipaliwanag naman ang COVID, pakipaliwanag naman ang vaccine, ba't kailangan nila
Mhm.
magpabakuna, ganito, ganyan. So we were kept busy. What we didn't anticipate and the problems that we encountered at the time were internal. Kasi all of the work that we were doing um, was starting to take a toll on us. So
Mhm.
our people were burned out. I was also burned out because I was trying to juggle all of these different concerns. Um, and so I think where an organization like BNI comes in, and even CIN, di ba, yung community ninyo sa Facebook, I
Mhm.
think just having a group of business owners that you can, or having a safe space where you can speak with fellow business owners about whatever struggles you might be going through na hindi mo maikwento sa mga empleyado kasi hindi naman sila makaka-relate, or feeling mo hindi natin gustong dagdagan yung mga anxiety and worries nila, or even your spouses, your partners, your friends might not be able to understand what you're going through. Nakatulong yung meron akong BNI, na I was part of Business Network International. I was part of this org na I could turn to, and just kahit release lang, yung parang may malabasan lang ako ng mga nasa saloobin ko, ganyan. Um,
Mhm.
Malaking tulong yon. But at the same time, BNI being what it is, when we needed help with, mental health resources, everyone had them ready. We had members who were specialists in mental health and mental wellness. So we were able to provide webinars. We were able to provide counseling for those who needed it. And I think where we are right now, coming into 2022, um, sa ngayon naman, ang big challenge namin is, we've spent the last 8 years being really good at what we do. Can we now try and document and scale and codify our processes so that anytime may mawala, because this was one of the things na talagang
Mhm.
nagpapanik kami nung the last 2 years, yung we would assign a project, kunwari, Clary, ikaw gagawa niyang project na yan, alagaan mo ha, nagka-mental health breakdown ka, na burnout ka bigla. Hindi mo na matuloy. So parang that process was not something we ever planned for.
Mhm.
Um, so all of a sudden, imbis na 1 month, now we had to finish the project in 1 week with a new person kasi hindi ka namin mahagilap. And we can't blame you kasi pandemic is really taking its toll. Or may kasakit, nagka-COVID siya bigla, so hindi niya rin matapos yung project. We actually, didn't anticipate that. We didn't realize we would need to plan for it. And so where we are right now is we're also asking for help from members in BNI who are HR consultants and process experts, to really make sure that we have systems in place so that we can be more effective and efficient, and also so that we have policies in place so that we can take care of each other better. Um, so yun, I mean, I wish we could have done it earlier, pero syempre parang as a business owner, there's always going to be 100 problems that you need to address. But you really
Mhm.
just need to prioritize ano yung pinaka-impactful, na parang if I focus on this one now, it'll make a huge impact and can keep us going and let me deal with the next problem afterward. Yun. One
All right.
problem at a
And one problem at a time, tama yan. And siguro yun nga din, Sir Albert, no? For service-based businesses, it's very important for us to put up SOPs, to make sure that we have processes in place para in case man, especially for skill-based na mga services, in case man na merong unexpected na mangyari, we have the necessary measures and steps na pwedeng saluhin ng mga papalit doon. But anyways, going to our next question, Sir Albert. Napakita natin or na-share mo kanina kung gaano talaga ka-importante on having a strong support system of entrepreneurs. Kung isa ka ding business owner, no? Aside from the referrals, having an opportunity to share your stories lang, kumbaga. Kagaya na ginagawa natin dito sa SB Talks na share your story para sa mga ibang business owners, either matulungan sila or ma-inspire sila sa kwento mo. Now, dun sa mga businesses na nahirapan or nag-struggle during the pandemic, do you have any other advice for them? Para, well, we are still in the pandemic right now, pero unti-unti nang bumabalik sa new normal, kumbaga. Ano yung masasabi nating advices for all those struggling business owners?
Um, I think because I've also spent some time helping fellow business owners kind of adjust to the pandemic. One of the things na continually binalik-balikan namin throughout the process is to go back to why you went into business in first place. What's the purpose? What's the core values? Diba? Kasi if you have your purpose, both your personal and also the purpose ng company, if you know what your purpose is, if you know what your company's purpose is, that gives you, I think, a direction to work towards. And if you have your core values, then it'll guide you on what the signposts are as you go through the route. Diba? Yung para hindi ka magstray. That kind of clarity, I think, helps you have more courage to just move forward with the business or to stick with it, knowing na hindi mo man alam kung ano yung itsura ng new normal. Hindi mo man alam kung ano yung itsura ng next normal. At least, even if you are not sure what the destination looks like, you have at least a direction through which you'll move. That's, I think, one of the first things. Just having that clear sense of what that is. Kasi the other part is, when you're trying to decide, okay, what's the next step then? Alam ko na yung direction eh. So, ano yung next step? Right foot muna? Left foot muna? Alin ba talaga? One of the things that we also had recurring conversations about is yung, uy, dati kasi, nagda-dropship ako ng mga produkto. Pero syempre, global shipping delays means wala akong inventaryo, wala akong benta. Anong gagawin ko? Diba? If you go back to your purpose, ano yung dahilan kung ba't mo siya pinasok in the first place? Ano yung problema na sinosolve mo for the people? It's actually, having those kinds of meaningful conversations allowed people to pivot and identify na parang, okay, sige, baka pala ang talagang gusto kong gawin is tulungan ang mga moms to have more meaningful objects to help them through their parenting journey. It's not pala about the appliances I sell. It's not pala about the planners that I was offering them. It was about a mindset. Maybe it's about skill set. We've seen some of our colleagues transition from, kunwari, drop shipping, naging coaches. We've had people na florists sila, so they were selling flowers at the time, but they transitioned to selling flower arrangement kits. So that became part of your mindfulness. Order ka ng mga flower arrangement kits, habang ginugupit-gupit mo siya, nagkakaroon ka ng mindfulness practice. It helps with your mental wellness. So having that clear sense of purpose, I think sometimes kasi, and I've had conversations like these as well, yung parang, ano naman yan parang, it's gonna limit me in terms of my options. The whole point nga is to explore anong posible. But having that clear sense actually turns out na it opens up possibilities. It clarifies kasi things that you can say yes to or no to, depending on where your skills are at, what resources are available to you, and how you can make use of them to continue providing value to the people that you serve.
I see. And siguro, to simplify everything, so long as you know your why or kung bakit ka nagsimula ng negosyo
Mhm.
na yon, madali ka na mag-pivot, madali ka na mag-adapt depending on the situation, no? So siguro isang very important thing that we should realize as business owners at the very start is bakit natin to ginagawa? Para saan natin to ginagawa? Pero Sir Albert, ito isa pang siguro advice mo na lang for those creatives. Specify natin to two creative individuals who would like to transition from a freelancer to a business owner. Ano yung magiging advice mo for them?
So aside from iwasan ninyo yung just because you can doesn't mean you should. Uh,
You should.
Aside from that, I think the other thing that a lot of freelancers tend to also fall into the trap of when you're in service industries is you don't know who your target market is. I think a lot of times we make the mistake of basta willing siya mag-sign ng cheque, game lang, let's do this.
Game.
But I think if you know what kinds of clients you want to be working with, do you want to work with private entities? Do you want to work in FMCGs? Do you want to work for hospitals? Diba? Sino yung mga kliyente mo sa mga ganyan? That can be one way to manage your energies, both your energy in building the business, but also your creative energies. Kasi if you think about it this way, Clary, pakilala mo naman ako sa mga friends mo kasi may bago kong studio, gusto ko siya i-promote. Sasabihin mo, di ba, parang, o sino yung gusto mo makilala? Basta may business sila, pwede kong gawing kliyente. How many businesses do you know, Clary? How many business owners do you know? Di ba? Ikaw lang mismo, I'm sure it's 100 at least. Di ba? There's only so many hours in the day. Sino yung sisimulan? Saan ka magsisimula?
Yep.
But in contrast, if you start from, kunwari, I just want to focus on hospitals, in pharmaceuticals, yung mga health industry. Kasi, dati akong pre-med na naging graphic designer, so naiintindihan ko yung mga gamot. Even if you just focus on that, that's not necessarily gonna limit your revenue prospects. Kasi, ilan bang pharma companies meron sa Pilipinas? Ilang gamot ang binebenta nila? Even hospitals, ilang hospitals meron sa Pilipinas? 'Di ba? From private to public institutions, ilang departments doon ang mga ngailangan ng graphic design services. And if you're able to start from there, sabihin mong let's start with company X na gumagawa ng, aspirin. That allows you, that project, you include that in your portfolio, allows you to make a stronger case for company Y na nagbebenta ng, Buscopan or whatever. Then that will make for that flywheel yung tinatawag namin. But that positive cycle of, may track record ka na, so alam namin na kaya mo tong ganitong trabaho. In contrast, if you're asked to, maggawa ka naman ng marketing campaign for a restaurant versus gawa ka ng campaign for a life insurance company, how will they know na you know how to target the audience they're looking for? Right? Wala ka pang track record dun sa bagong kumpanya. And so it makes it that much more difficult for you to sell to that particular client. And even when I was talking earlier, it manages your creative agency because your creative energy. Because if you've worked with pharma before, then you know more or less the language that they're speaking. You can relate to their culture and you won't have to reorient your brain. You won't have to reimagine certain things. And so you can focus your energy on a smaller subset of the problem. For example, the messaging or the visuals or the medium. Diba? So na-manage rin yung energy mo. As opposed to if you're jumping from hospital client to na puro health pinag-uusapan nyo to life insurance bigla, tapos mamaya kinakausap nyo hedge fund manager. Parang the jargon is different, the culture is different, the pace is also different. Right? So just focus on a target market I think if you're also clear on, we were talking earlier about purpose and your why. If you're clear what your why is, it helps point the direction towards the target market that you'll want to work with. Diba? Dugtong-dugtong na lang yun eh. And when
Mhm.
you already know the target market you want to work with, sa kanila ka na lang mag-yes. And then for everyone else, either tell them to wait or just say no na lang. Diba? Kasi you already know who you should be serving eh. Yun.
And it will be easier for you to replicate your process as well. You don't have to reimagine, reinvent things as you go. And thank you very much for that great advice, Sir Albert. Siguro last question natin before we end our episode today, no? Let me ask you, what's next for Pushpin Visual Solutions?
So marami naman kaming mga pipeline dreams. Is it the time na magpa-pipeline dreams tayo? Ito na ba
Yeah,
'yun?
in general, maybe, ano yung plan or ano
Oo.
yung dinidream? Siguro that's the right term, not really, but ano yung gusto mong mangyari ma-achieve within the next 2, 3 years for Pushfin?
Yeah, so right now we're laying the seeds for those next 2 to 3 years. Um, I think on the whole, what's next for Pushpin is we want to increase the impact we have on society and the environment, um, and beyond just sorry. Sorry, nawala yung train of thought ko. Um,
No reason.
I think I think what's next for Pushpin is that we want to increase our social impact. We want to make more of an impact on communities and the environment beyond just delivering a service to the clients that we work with. Um, so we've already actually started planting the seeds for that, um, in two ways. One is that we've actually made commitments to 1% for the planet, to donate 1% of our gross revenues to environmental causes. And we've partnered up with Waves for Water in the Philippines to be the recipient of that. Um, in addition to the 1% that we've committed to them, we've also committed 0.5% of our gross revenue to World Vision Philippines to support naman their education programs. So it touches on two of our core advocacies in Pushpin, environment and education. And then we have a third advocacy kasi. So we call them the 3 E's: environment,
Mhm.
education, equity. In the third case naman where we're talking about equity, we've partnered up with Linya Linya and Puma Podcast for a campaign called #Mabuting Makinig. And the idea there was that we wanted to encourage people to listen more with open minds, with open hearts, with empathy and compassion, um, to listen to people whose views they might not be aligned with, to listen to the environment and what they can do to help it, to listen to marginalized communities so that we can help those who need it the most. So that the campaign is really Mabuting Makinig, and that's part of our push for equity, one of our core advocacies. And eventually, that will also hopefully lead to us also being able to create our own content. Um, Yun, medyo matagal-tagal pa yon. But the Mabuting Makinig campaign is our parang practice na, that we want to
Mhm.
create content that hopefully will resonate with people so that it spreads to more people, while at the same time providing a lot of value and impact to communities, to people, to environment. And that's really what we're hoping to be able to push, and that's the next phase for Pushpin.
It's great to know, actually, Sir Albert, that beyond your business, you are trying to push for your advocacies, no, with Pushpin Visuals. And actually, I was able to listen to your Twitter space with Puma Podcast and Linya Linya when I was doing the research for our episode today. But yeah, siguro, Sir Albert, last part natin is, if in case man na meron tayong mga ka-SBN na gusto kang mahanap or makakonect for Pushpin Visual Solutions, or you as a coach, saan ka nila mahanap?
Right. So I am most active on LinkedIn. And you can just look for Elbert or there. I'm sure lalabas siya. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as well. Um, And you can follow us or at Pushpin Visuals or at Elbert or. I think the last is if you wanna also ask questions, or reach out to us for collaborations or projects that you wanna explore, you can also email me elbert@pushpinvisuals.com.
All right. Thank you very much, Sir Elbert, and thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully, marami sa ating mga ka-SBN ang na-inspire at natuto sa pag-share ng iyong journey with Pushpin Visual Solutions sa amin ngayong araw. Thank you very much, Sir Elbert, and have a good day. Salamat sa pakikinig at panonood ka SBN. At kung gusto mo ng more business-related content, make sure to follow us on our Facebook page at smallbusinessnetwork.ph. Follow us on YouTube channel at Small Business Network Philippines at mag-join din sa ating online community sa Facebook group na Small Business Network Philippines. Kita-kita tayo!